demands to toss ballots, to overturn our democracy, when does that become sanctionable, punishable, or criminal? When is there accountability? Well, with these cases that are going nowhere, we now have two branches of government in on basically trying to steal the race. One Republican congressman relaying that Trump has been asking him to contact all members, asking to join that brief we've been reporting on, that he'll be anxiously awaiting the final list. And this becomes an attack on the rule of law, depending on the calendar. This is important, and let me explain. There is a time for fighting during the campaign. There's a time for disputing when there's open legal challenges. But then an election gets certified, which it now is. Then there's no remaining active legal question. That is the point at which, under the rule of law, you do accept the results, especially if you're a member of government. We know what this is supposed to look like because there's precedent. We are right now living through the time period, the legal turf that Al Gore was in after all of his legal challenges ended. He did the opposite of Donald Trump, even presiding over the House counting of that final Electoral College vote.
Mr. President, I am objecting to the idea that votes in Florida were not counted. And it's a sad day in America, Mr. President, when we can't find a senator to sign the objections.
Gentleman will suspend. George W. Bush of the state of Texas has received for President of the United States 271 votes. Al Gore of the state of Tennessee has received 266 votes. May God bless our new president and our new vice president, and may God bless the United States of America.
That's what following the rule of law and respecting the outcome looked like, whether people enjoyed it or not, depending on what team you were on. A total contrast to what's happening now from Donald Trump on down. We see blatant defiance of this rule of law. We have attorneys now calling for the people who have been pushing this past the point of acceptable argument to be disbarred. And they cite three rules of the formal American Bar Association that they say Donald Trump's lawyers, some of them, have violated. Making a false statement of material fact or law to a third person, defending a proceeding without basis in law and fact, and engaging in conduct that involves dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. Now, these are open debates. I'm not reporting tonight what the answer should be, but for those wondering, are there any potential consequences? This is one set of potential consequences, and whether or not you think these lawyers violate those professional rules, that's the question that is looking more relevant.
I know you keep reporting falsely that we have no evidence. But you can't say there's no evidence. This is what we call evidence. You're cheating. That could have been Mickey Mouse. That could have been a dead person. Once, twice, three times. We're going to put Republican inspectors in pens, give us an opportunity to prove it in court, and we will. We're going to go to court. We're going to prove it in court. The censorship is almost as dangerous as the election fraud that we're revealing.
Mr. Giuliani was wrong there, and they didn't prove it in court. They lost badly and repeatedly. The professional question of whether, beyond the loss, he continued to say outright falsehoods and deceptions in the practice of law is an open one and a serious one. Then there's Sidney Powell, who proved to be so fact-free and conspiratorial, asserting things that could also be sanctionable if said under oath, that even President Trump began to distance himself from her.
The affidavit of the young man from Venezuela who saw Hugo Chavez create how they did the software. The system was created and how it worked to accomplish the objective for Hugo Chavez. Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State need to go with it because they're in on the Dominion scam. Hopefully this week we will get it ready to file.
Sidney,
it will be biblical.
I won't try to fact check the biblical part. I'm not even sure what she's getting at, but on the Bar Association rules, there could be sanctionable conduct there. Of course, there'd be a time limit to that because, well, the Trump folks got her out of their legal team. Now, you have Rudy Giuliani today, and this is interesting, brand new as part of our report, again showing something that is a tell, that the focus is on the out-of-court action of abusing or exploiting the look and talk of a legal process, and they care more about that than any in-court evidence.
call Jason after this. We should try to get this on Newsmax, on IAN, the hearings in Georgia today.
That's a brief look at the mentality. Now, the consequences could live long past January 20th. By some surveys, 77% of Republicans believe there was this kind of voter fraud that is the evidence-free basis of some of these cases. Then there's the climate of fear. New arrests made for these threats. And you have issues with protesters, politicians, and law enforcement officers. Outrage among Trump loyalists that leads to actual danger. And then a moment we've reported on that is just one of many, but that we have seen personalized all this for some observers. So regardless of your ideology, regardless of who you voted for, if you see a public servant who is also a mother having to stop her work, the normal government business of the day, because people were menacing her front yard and potentially putting her child in danger.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment? My 12-year-old son is home by himself right now, and there are protesters banging outside the door, okay? I'm going to go home and make sure he's okay, so I will reconnect with you when I get there.
Now, any trespassing is obviously sanctionable as a crime, let alone potential menacing or true threats or violence. Now, marching and speaking and even lying, I emphasize again, is generally held by our courts to be legal free speech. So when you talk about sanctions or consequences for what we're living through, these are not actually all easy answers. There are legal rules that protect things that many people that you may oppose. Objectionable speech, for example. So these can be tough calls. But there are also some lines that we know cannot be crossed without sanction in a lawful democracy. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.